Okay, so in this video I thought we'd work with the different functions and operators that the calculator can offer as we wanted to find the cosine function, for example, in last week's class. So to get all of these things, you can open this book. So this is the menu as we discovered last time. Oh, and I had control press, that's why it brought up that other menu first. And you'll notice that you have 6 tabs here along the top. And you can move between them by pressing the numbers on your calculator. So if we start with menu 1, you'll notice it's an alphabetical list of lots and lots of different things that the calculator can do. To make the process of finding things that you want faster, you can type in on the keypad the first letter of the thing that you want. So say I wanted a sine function, I'd press S and then I'd go round until I saw sine, then I'd press enter. And then I can say the sine of, let's say, 23 degrees. And if I press enter, of course, it just returns sine of 23. If I press control and enter, it gives me that approximated as a decimal. So we have this big, long alphabetical list of lots of different things that the calculator can do, some of which you will recognize, some of which you won't yet recognize, but we'll be learning a few more functions over the course of this year and, of course, next year as well. I suggest that you pause the video and have a little scroll through this list and see if there's anything that you recognize and have a play around. In the box down here, it tells you what needs to go into that expression. So you need sine, brackets, and then you need to put an expression in here, for example, a number that you want to calculate the sine of before it will calculate. Other things have different requirements, and I'll show you those in a minute when we get into menu 2. So menu 1, like I said, is an alphabetical list, and it's very long and therefore a little bit cumbersome to use. It's not particularly convenient. Under menu 2, however, things are broken down more nicely into different sections. So under number, for example, we have our convert to decimal, approximate to fraction. And this element here would tell you how precise you want that fraction to be. You can factorize things. You can find the least common multiple and the greatest common divisor. You'll notice that these two require 2 numbers, as you would probably expect. So if we wanted to find the greatest common divisor of 12 and 34, the calculator can do that for us without us actually figuring anything out ourselves. Of course, you do need to still be able to know how to do these things on your own and not just rely on the calculator to do it for you, because you need to check your answers, you need an understanding of where your answers come from so you can decide whether or not they're sensible answers, for example. But of course, it's much faster that the calculator can do the calculation element for us. So finishing off our section then on number, we looked at convert to decimal last time. But approximate to fraction is not something we've looked at so far, so I'd like to just have a look at that quickly. You'll notice that here it says that we need some kind of expression, so that's the thing that we want to approximate, then an arrow, then this approx fraction which it puts in for us, and then this tol, which is a tolerance. So that's plus or minus that amount. How accurate do we want our answer? So the smaller this is, the more accurate it is. And you'll notice that this here is in square brackets. And actually this means that you don't absolutely need something in there. In this case, the calculator has a built-in default setting that if you don't put anything in there, it has a default level of tolerance that it will calculate your number to. But you can change this to be as accurate or inaccurate as you want. So rather than taking our previous answer here, which would be 2, what I'd like to do would be to, if I open this menu here with this pi button down there, I could approximate pi to a fraction. And if I want my tolerance level to be, for example, 0.1, so I'd like plus or minus 0.1, it approximates pi to 22/7, which is a common approximation of pi. If I then copy this, and I take out this tolerance level in here, then this is the default tolerance level, 5 times 10 to the negative 14, and you'll see it'll approximate pi to an extremely a fraction with an extremely large numerator and an extremely large denominator, which is then a better approximation of pi as a fraction. So that's another example of something that this calculator can do. That's under the number menu. Under the angle menu, you'll notice that this is where we can convert degrees into radians and vice versa. That's something that we'll look at together when we revisit trigonometry soon. So don't worry about that for the moment. We'll cover that when we come to it. Something that you'll be particularly interested in at the moment is the vector menu, which allows you to calculate the unit vector. So you'll see that the argument we need to put in here is a vector, and I'll show you how to do that. So if we press enter on this one, then putting a vector in, you need to find this button here with the squares and the different types of brackets. And this button here is the one that gives us a column vector. A row vector would be this one here, with two components. So if I took the vector 3, -6, and pressed enter, then the calculator returns the unit vector of 3, -6. Of course it returns it to us with square roots in it, because it returns a precise result. If you wanted it as a decimal, then control enter, of course, would then return it as a decimal number. It doesn't just do the unit vector. You'll also notice in this menu that we can calculate the dot product, and from the video on scalar products, hopefully you remember that the dot product is just another name for the scalar product of two vectors. And here I need a vector, comma, and then another vector. So let's see what this can do. I add in then a vector with two components, let's say 1, 2, then a comma, then another vector, let's say 3, -1, and I press enter, and the calculator automatically does the dot product of those two vectors for me. So that's all we need for the moment with the vector menu. Later on we'll also introduce the cross product. A menu in number 2 that you should find really interesting would be the solve function under algebra, and this enables you to solve an equation. So you put the equation first in the brackets, then a comma, and then the variable through which you want to solve the equation. So if I put in then x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0 as my equation, and the variable I want to solve this equation for is x, so I put comma x, then it tells me that I have one solution, namely when x is equal to -1. And this can calculate equations or solve equations that are much more complicated than this. Let's go for x to the power of 3 plus 2x squared minus 1 equals 0. And again, I'd like to solve that for x. And you'll see it gives me three results, sorry. X can be this number, or this number. And again, we have square roots in the answer. I press Control and Enter. It gives me the three results as decimal numbers. And of course, in this argument here, x doesn't need to be our variable at all. It could be any of the letters that you choose, just as long as you specify which variable it is here afterwards, after the comma. So, hopefully you quite like that one. It means that you then don't have to solve equations again manually, or it means that you can check your answers with a calculator if you're asked to solve them manually by a question. It will also factorize expressions for you. And here we have the expression, and then we can add the variable in if it's not clear. So if I wanted to factorize, for example, x squared plus x, then it will automatically do it for me without putting in the variable, because it's intelligent enough to do that. And it will even do it if I wanted to factorize, for example, x squared y plus y squared x. It will even factorize all of that for me. So you see, you don't then need to put in a variable afterwards. You can also expand an expression. So if, for example, you wanted to multiply two brackets, for example, x plus 3 multiplied by x minus 4, let's put a multiplication symbol in there. It will then expand the brackets for you. It will multiply out the brackets. That's what the expand function does. And you'll see that there are a few different things. Another really interesting thing that you would be interested in would be completing the square. You should remember last year when we were looking at functions, you needed to complete the square to find the coordinates of the vertex of a quadratic function, and your calculator can complete the square for you. So if I had a quadratic expression, for example, x squared minus 2x plus 1, oh, I forgot to put in my variable, comma x, as it wasn't optional here, then it completes the square like this. And it can do it for more complicated ones as well. If I completed the square of x squared, or let's say 3x squared minus 8x plus 3, or no, let's go for plus 2, then you'll see that it completes the square properly for you, and it gives it to you, the answer to you, as a fraction as well, which of course you could convert to a decimal using the tricks that we've seen before as well. So it can complete the square for you and thus also tell you the coordinates of a vertex of a parabola, for example. So hopefully you'll find those quite interesting. It can also, under the algebra list, solve systems of equations. So we could solve a system of linear equations, two variables, which is something that we've also looked at before. So we could have 3x plus 4y equals 1, and y equals 2 minus x, for example. It gives you x comma y, x is 7, y is negative 5. There are all sorts of things that it can do, and again, have a little look through, see if there's anything else that you'd like to use in that menu. I've shown you the main highlights of the menu. Under trigonometry, it also allows us to add in the sine, cosine, and tangent, and also the inverse sine, cosine, and tangent, just like this. Otherwise, there are a few different things. For example, we can convert numbers to binary automatically using the calculator. But they're the main things I wanted to show you there. Menu number 3 looks at converting units. So we would be converting different things and also using constants. These are things that you might require more in, for example, physics. And we won't use them so often in maths, but just so that you know that they're there. 4 means you can insert any symbols in. And 5 is the vector menu that we pulled up earlier. 6 is the library, but that's not something we're going to look at today. You'll notice that this is exactly the same menu as we got by pressing this button here. And quite a few of them have shortcuts as well that I'd just like to show you. So we've seen this one, which brings up our vector menu. We've also seen this one that brings up a menu that allows you to put in a few different things. So we have pi, a degrees symbol, an R for radians. Some of these we'll come across later. Infinity, of course, you know. Theta for angles, possibly. Escape. A further menu that might interest you is the trigonometric menu, through which you can select different trigonometric functions like sine, cos, and tan, and the inverses of those three. And that should give you most things you need to do a few calculations and try a few things out. I'd select 1 or 2 exercises from across the book from last year, for example, and see if you're now capable of doing them with your calculator. And please ask me any questions next time in class, and I can make a further video.